Kyle Chambers here with Texas Quality Assurance for the TQA Quality Minute. So what we want to talk about today is something that we hear about all the time. The problems that folks have in dealing with NCR versus CAR. What's the difference matter? How do we determine it? And yes, the new edition of the standard made it a lot more blurry, but we'll get to that. So the first thing we have to know is, well, what are these terms? So NCR is a non-conformance report. Your organization may title it or call it a little differently. It's the same basic idea. Then we have a corrective action report, which requires a corrective action. Action being the operative word, because non-conformity reports still require correction as well. So that action, see, that's the critical piece, is it requires a lot of additional work for us, which is where we have, management of change comes into plays, preventative action reports come into play, engineering change notices. These, more often than not, are as a result of the action and the corrective action. But we'll go through it. First thing is we have a nonconformity. All a nonconformity means is something didn't go the way it was supposed to. Could be an out-of-spec material, could even be an occupational illness or injury, could be any of these type things, but something did not go according to our policy process, requirements, and such. So we want to record as many of those nonconformities as we can get our hands a hold of, because they start to provide a pattern, and you can get all sorts of great data and information that you can act off of later. But that's maybe for another topic. So what we want to do is we want to record as many of those nonconformities as we can, but just recording that something went wrong is never enough. So we want to not only record that it went wrong, but we need to record what we're going to do about it as a result. So that is where the correction comes into play. Correction, if we assign ourselves a few basic codes here, we can do a lot of good. For one, maybe the correction is just leave it as is. We're not going to do anything about it. We just want to note that it happened, we're going to leave it alone, and we just want record that it occurred. Maybe it's nothing that's a large issue. Maybe it's a one-off event, but we don't know unless we record a lot of nonconformities as a result. Then at the end of the year, we can see, wow, we had a 21 leave as is for this nonconformity. Maybe we need to take action to prevent it from occurring in the future. The other one that we're going to look at here for a correction code is break, fix, rework. It's probably the most common one that you're going to use. Is the material was out of spec, we reworked it, it's now in spec, we move on. Not every problem requires a change to your process. Not every problem requires a large change in your organization. We just need to fix it. Something just went wrong. Now, you might be asking yourself right now, well, what if it happens all the time? How do we know? When does this become a big deal? Well, that's why we record a lot of nonconformities. So with a lot of NCRs, even a 10-to-1 or 20-to-1 ratio to our corrective actions, we're going to get that really good data to know what we need to do to continually improve our processes. The next one is scrap. Fortunately, this happens. So the scrap is just that. We can't use the material at all. It's a complete total loss and move forward. So oftentimes the scrap can become a big issue in the moment, but depending on what you're doing, if it's metalworking with large sections of sheet metal and it's relatively inexpensive, scrap may not necessarily be a terrible scenario for you. The other situation here is we're just going to educate, we're going to retrain someone. Maybe the reason that we're having this nonconformity is just that someone needs a little bit of additional training, a little bit of additional education on how to do this job properly. So let's get that done. Now, if we have several educate retrains for that same person, we might need to take some action to improve things there. We're not too worried about that today. So your NCRs will end at the correction phase, and that's it. Your corrective actions, on the other hand, still include all of the same information. What went wrong? What did we do about it today? Except in our corrective actions, we will call it our immediate, however you spell that, corrective action here. So then we'll move on into our prevention phase. Well, what steps do we take to ensure that this particular problem never occurs again? And that corrective action absolutely could reference multiple non-conformance reports as evidence. So what are we going to do to ensure this never occurs again? And that's where change management comes into play. And we're going to set out those checklists. We're going to set out those to-do lists. And we're going to get things done to make the appropriate changes and educate everyone on it. But we're not done yet. We've got one last step. We have to worry about validation. You need to go back at some point in the future, 2 weeks, 30 days, 60 days in the future, and check to make sure that this original problem is no longer recurring and that your change was successful. With the validation completed, you're good to go. Your corrective action is completed, your non-conformance is completed, your change management is completed, and everything rolls together in one nice, easy-to-use system.